Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining Encore Palm Beach County for our monthly Zoom event. We are honored today to have Richard Eisenberg with us. I'm very happy to let him introduce himself and tell you all about himself. Richard, thank you so much for being here. Take it away.
Well, thank you. Hi, Christine. Thank you, Rosemary. So nice to be here and to see everybody. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have. So I call myself unretired. I'm an unretired journalist, and by that I mean I had a career as a journalist, a writer, and editor. I was the executive editor of Money Magazine. I was the managing editor at Next Avenue, the website from PBS for people over 50. I worked at Good Housekeeping, a bunch of other places. And a few years ago in 2022, I decided I wanted to step away from full-time work, but I didn't want to retire from life. I just wanted to retire from my full-time job. So I called myself unretired. And since then, what I'm now doing is I do a lot of different things. I'm writing for Next Avenue. I write a column about unretirement for Market Watch. I write about Medicare for Fortune. I just turned in an article a few minutes ago. I do a podcast called Friends Talk Money. But I also do things like volunteering, and we can talk about that. I do that in a few different ways, and mentoring. But I also like to travel. My wife and I just came back from a wonderful trip in Norway and Denmark and spent time with our grown sons and their wives who live in Los Angeles. I live in New Jersey, and we have a new granddaughter in Los Angeles. So I'm excited about that, but want to see her more often. So in a nutshell, that's sort of who I am and what I am doing, but I'm happy to tell you more.
Thank you. Thank you for introducing yourself. You do quite a bit. I don't know how you managed to fit it all in. One of the things I did want to ask you is about your unretirement. What made you decide to become unretirement, or did you actually put a plan in place for this stage of your life?
Well, I kind of knew that I wanted to leave a full-time job. I wasn't sure exactly when, I wasn't sure exactly how and how it would all work out. But the more I thought of it, and when I was at Next Avenue, besides being the managing editor, I was the editor of the money and work channels there. So I've been writing and editing a lot about retirement over the years. So I've talked to a lot of and read a lot of things about retirement from very smart people. Helped me learn, I think, what I wanted to try to do and what I wanted to try to avoid. So I decided in 2021 that it had been 10 years since I was at Next Avenue. I had just turned 65. I felt like that was a good time to step away. And I had a rough idea of what I wanted my unretirement to be. I knew I wanted to keep writing and editing part-time. And I thought I had an idea of where I might do it, but I wasn't sure exactly. And I had vague ideas of what I wanted to spend my rest of the time doing, but mostly I just knew I wanted to have the time to try to figure it out. So I approached my boss and I said, this is what I want to do. I want to give them enough time so I could train my replacement if they wanted me to. And when you leave a job, you never know how your boss is going to react. I've had bosses who were understanding and some who were very angry, and you just don't know. I was lucky in this case, they were understanding and they were kind enough to say that they would like me to keep writing for them, which I've done. So I would say I had an outline of a unretirement plan, but I've been sort of filling in the blanks as it's gone on, and it keeps changing too.
It keeps changing. So many people don't put a plan in place, and the ones that don't find themselves, as you probably are very familiar with this, they find themselves bored, frustrated. And so, what do you suggest are ways for people to get out of that funk phase and learn to enjoy their retirement?
I'll answer that firstly, but first I'll tell you, I just saw it yesterday. Um, there was an article in the Retire with Money newsletter that cited there's a YouTube channel called My Retired Life, and they asked people what their biggest regrets about retirement were. And I think this kind of gets to your question. The five that they said they regretted most, and I recognize some of them myself, one was not retiring earlier. One was not spending more money when they first retired, and I think that's easy to do because it's so easy for us to be so nervous about ever spending a penny in retirement once we don't have a full-time salary coming in that we're afraid to spend anything. They had the regrets about not taking better care of their health, not finding a hobby, and not traveling more. So in my case, um, I thought a lot about what did I want to retire to, not just what I want to retire from. A lot of people know what they want to stop doing and people they don't want to work with, but they don't think much about sort of, well, okay, well, how am I going to spend my days and where am I going to find meaning and purpose in life? And I felt like that was important to do. And I had an idea about some of those things, but I felt like those are things I also want to put more of a focus on. So I would say if you're still working full time and want to retire or unretire sometime soon, spend some time to think about what would that life look like? What do you want it to look like? And what do you need to do to prepare for that? And some of it is financial, but a lot of it is psychological. A lot of it is, who am I going to be when I don't have my work identity anymore? And that's a big problem for a lot of people and very challenging too.
Great advice, terrific advice, because there are so many people that are floundering. They really don't know where to begin. And so that's really terrific advice because we all know when boredom sets in, that's when health issues set in and so many other things happen. So yeah, it's really important. And as you and I had talked about earlier too, and you hit on it a little bit, volunteering is such an important thing to do. I always tell clients of my own, volunteer somewhere. If you're not sure what to do, just go volunteer. Find something that you really like to do, something that gets you excited about getting up in the morning and being social and being part of a community. All very good points.
Yeah, absolutely. I do feel like volunteering is something that when you're retired, you now have more time to do. I know I felt like I didn't have the time when I was working, and I probably could have made the time, but I just didn't. Now I feel like I've got the time. I don't have an excuse not to be volunteering and mentoring, and so I'm doing that in a couple of different ways. Personally, what I do is there's a place near where I live in New Jersey called Furniture Assist. And on Saturdays, when I go there to volunteer, I'm helping people who need things for their homes that they just don't have the money for. And so it could be furniture, it could be clothes, it could be baby items, that sort of thing. And they come into the nonprofit through a social service agency, and we help them find what they're looking for. And then on Sundays, I volunteer there, and that's the day that people drive up with the things that they no longer need or want anymore. And sometimes it's furniture, but it's sometimes dishes or clothes. And so I feel like I'm helping people in two different ways. And I'm enjoying getting out of my house and doing that, but also feeling useful. I'm also volunteering a lot with a group called the American Society of Journalists and Authors. It's a national group of freelancers, and I'm helping them with the upcoming conference that they're doing. So I find both of those to be very invigorating. Although I do know a lot of people say that they want to volunteer, but they don't know where or how to do it, and they find themselves sort of frustrated not knowing. I feel like that charities and nonprofits could do a better job of helping people find where they could be useful and do volunteering. There are websites like Volunteer Match and Idealist and others like that, Encore, that will help people find places to volunteer, but often it can be a little tricky.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, and that's why that's one of the tenets of Encore is we actually have a link on our website where someone could fill that out as to what they might be interested in, or a couple of questions about what they're looking for, who they'd like to work with, how much time they want to spend on it, and we receive that in, and then we have one of our volunteer coaches reach out to them and help them through the process, and also go through our website with some of the opportunities that we have on our website from the nonprofits. So it's really important because like you said, it's very hard for people to find out where to go. There's so much out there. It's like, where do I begin?
Yeah, I would also say don't feel bad if you start volunteering someplace and you just don't think it's a good fit or you're not enjoying it. Don't beat yourself up about that, and don't make yourself think that that means you shouldn't try someplace else. I feel like volunteering in retirement is can be hit or miss and trial and error, and you look for the place where you feel like you're doing something useful and you're enjoying it and you like the people. And if you happen to find one that doesn't do that for you, that's okay. Just move on and look for another one.
Look for another one. Exactly. Yeah. Because as Rosemary and I always say, it's got to be fun. When it stops being fun, we need to stop doing it. And of course, we all have different ways of having fun, but
Right.
so
Well, and it's also nice to do it in a way where you can be with people of all ages. I feel sometimes those of us in retirement at this age of life end up kind of siloed with other people who are very much like us, same age. And that's fine for a lot of the time, but I feel like we're missing out if we're not around younger people also. So for me, I find when I'm volunteering or when I'm teaching at NYU, I'm really enjoying being around teenagers, people in their 20s and 30s, hearing from them, seeing the world through their eyes in a way that I might not otherwise.
that's a very good point because and we talk about a lot of that with when we speak about the intergenerational workforce and how important it is to be able to share ideas and look at things from that different perspective because many older people say, well, I know everything. I don't need to learn from a 20-year-old. And yet the 20-year-olds have a lot to teach us because they look at the world through a totally different lens than we do. And so, so it's really nice to be able to do that in something that you're enjoying doing, volunteering and having doing a project together. And we actually have done a few different programs on that. And we've heard some interesting stories from HR people about how they were able to work those people together. And they actually became very compatible. When handled properly, they became very compatible and mentoring each other in different areas. So it's really a joy to be able to do that and have fun while you're doing it.
Yeah. You mentioned HR people, and it made me think. I wrote a piece recently
Have you met Natasha?
About retirement resumes, and how it's really important if you're looking for part-time work in retirement to have an updated resume. A lot of us haven't looked at a resume in many, many years. But what I learned when I was doing that research was that it's really important to include volunteering in your resume and in your LinkedIn profile if that's something that you're doing and spending time in, partly just to let people know that you're doing it, but also because many times the skills that you put to use as a volunteer could be skills that you could be using for paid work as well. And so don't feel that just because you're not getting paid, that doesn't have any relevance if you're looking for some kind of work. It actually often does.
It often does. Yes, I agree with you. Yeah. I actually have mentioned this in another conversation that I went back to school later on in life and I had to complete my life experience to get credits for college classes. And it was really interesting. I mean, by the time I finished my PTA work with my kids' nursery school and things along those lines, and my Rotary work and everything else, I gained like 30 college credits being able to use those transferable skills. So there's definitely something to be said for that. We forget sometimes that what we've done in our lifetime has value.
Absolutely. You're right.
Yeah, and we can still build on that value at any age. So you're versed in so many areas, and the retirement, personal finance. How do you see the financial impact of retirement? I know that's something that you write a lot about, and how people are dealing with, or how retirement is impacting people's finances, and vice versa. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I've got a lot of thoughts on that, but we don't have that much time. I'll mention a few of them. The biggest challenge I would say for people when they're entering retirement, whether it's the traditional retirement or the unretirement, as I call it, is not having a paycheck. And you're so used to having money coming in on a regular basis every 2 weeks. There's a comfort level with that, not to mention just being able to pay the bills. And then suddenly when that stops, it's a very scary thing. And so I would say before you start retirement, you really want to spend some time looking at, well, where is my money going to come from in retirement to pay my bills and also to have some fun and that sort of thing? And do I need to work more in order to have the income that I need, or do I have enough savings to take care of it? And working with a financial advisor, it can be very helpful just to let you see whether you're on track or not. Um, so I would say that's sort of the first thing. The second thing is one of the big changes, particularly, once you get to age 65 or get close to that, is health insurance and Medicare. And that is a very confusing new system for a lot of people who've never been in it before. And it's complicated. It can be very helpful, but there are lots of, I would say, traps and mistakes that people make. That's why I'm writing about it on fortune.com. Now, Medicare's website is pretty good, and they have a very good free publication that people get every year called Medicare and You that does answer a lot of questions. You can also hire a Medicare agent or a broker to help you if you want to help you choose among policies to buy. And also, every state has what's called a state health insurance assistant program or a SHIP program. I'm sure Florida has one like every other state does. And these are staffed by volunteers who are experts on Medicare. And so I would say if you are confused about your health insurance after 65 and making the right choices, an agent or broker or a SHIP plan or Medicare can be useful for you. Those are sort of the big things. Investing and saving and that sort of thing, that's very personal. And I don't feel like I can offer particular advice about that, except I would say, if you can continue to save while you're in retirement, you absolutely should. Some people feel like, well, once I've retired, I don't have a 401k plan anymore, so I can't save. Well, you can. You can still save through an IRA. You may be able to save through a solo 401k if you're self-employed. So there are ways to keep saving for the future and maybe in a tax sheltered way as well.
Excellent advice. Excellent advice. So we're going to give you a minute to catch your breath and see if there's any questions. Anyone have any questions at the moment?
I just have a comment. I just retired as of last week, so I'm very new to this game. So I only have, this is only my third day into it. But I will say that one thing I've been doing, which seems to help, is I've been talking to a lot of people from my past. I've many places that I've worked. And the only thing that kind of has convinced me is that everybody kind of chooses their own path. There really isn't one solution that works across the board. So I think being comfortable with the uncertainty of it is something we have to learn. I'm trying to kind of teach myself that part of it as well.
That's great. Well, congratulations, Norman. It's a new adventure, a little scary, I'm sure, but also exciting in some other ways too. I do find, as you say, that reconnecting with old colleagues and friends and family is helpful in lots of different ways, partly just to stay engaged, but also partly to sort of know what opportunities there might be out there for you for work, for volunteering, that sort of thing. So I think you're doing all the right things already.
And I see Yanni Reese. Did I say that correctly? Has her hand up?
Yeah, yeah, fine.
Hi, you have a question?
Actually, this is a great meeting, by the way. I am barely beginning my preparation for retirement. I'm dealing with health issues that are forcing me to retire early. However, as a type A personality, overachiever, I don't foresee myself sitting on a rocking chair post-retirement. So, but whatever I do post-retirement has to be fun. I'm ready to hang my HR hat. Been more than 30 years, and I just want to do sort of the things that I wanted to do growing up. Everything I wanted to pursue when I was growing up was in the arts field, writing, teaching. I've dabbled a little bit, but I do want to pursue that realm. Richard's presentation gave me a lot of information to kind of like ponder, because I'm not only looking at what to do, where to do it, but yeah, the financial, the Medicare. So thank you. I received the invitation and I just perceived it as the universe conspiring with me in my quest to prepare for this new chapter in my life. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you. And Encore is here to help you, and so is Richard. Richard is a wealth of information. So Richard, before we go any further, tell people how they could find all your articles. I know you did a rundown, but where do you suggest people follow you for the best advice?
Oh, well, thank you very much. And Yanis, best of luck in your new chapter as well. It sounds very exciting. I've heard a lot of people say that they love this time of life to return to things that they never got around to do or they used to love to do, but they haven't done it for years. I've got a friend who was a financial planner for many years, and he used to play saxophone when he was a kid and hadn't picked it up in about 50 years. And now he's playing in a jazz band and he's loving it. Okay, but to answer Christine's question, so you can find me in a few different places. I'm on LinkedIn, of course, like most people are these days. So you can certainly connect with me that way. I write for Next Avenue about personal finances and work after 50. So if you were to Google or do a search on Next Avenue, you can find my articles there. I write the column for Market Watch called The View from Unretirement. I write that every 2 weeks. And if you go to the retirement channel, you can find me there. I write about Medicare for Fortune.com. They have an area on their website called Fortune.com the Well channel. That's all about aging. And I write for them. You can find my pieces about Medicare there. And then the podcast I do is called Friends Talk Money. We record, my two friends and I record that usually every couple of weeks. And we usually have a new episode every couple of weeks or so. And it's all about personal finances after 50. A lot of it about retirement, but everything from Medicare to grandchildren to travel to Social Security, you name it. So I hope you'll get a chance to listen at some point and read anything that I've written that you find interesting, and I'm happy to connect. If anybody wants to email me, let me go to chat and I will put in my email address for anybody who wants to reach out at any point. Do that right now. Oops.
Because you are a wealth of information, so people need to reach out and learn more. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Thank you. You recently did an article, I believe it was with Tom Hunt, yes, about age bias. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this is interesting. So Tom Hunt is British, and he is an employer in England, and he wrote a short LinkedIn piece that I found fascinating and has gotten a lot of attention. And it was about how he feels employers need to interview and hire people over 50, and they're not doing it. As I think people in our audience and a lot of other people over 50 and 60 know, there's still a lot of age discrimination by employers. A lot of employers just won't even interview people over 50 or 60 because they feel they're out of touch, they don't have the interest, they won't be engaged, and a lot of that's just not true at all. Well, he wrote this piece about why people need to do it, and he got an avalanche of responses from people saying, "You're so right. I'm seeing that myself," and employers are starting to say, "You know what? I'm going to start doing that." And so I wrote an article about that, and I mentioned that AARP has what they call the age-friendly pledge, where employers pledge to say that they will, look at an interview and hire older adults. They do that. There's something called the Age Friendly Institute, and they have a list of certified age-friendly employers. So those are places that it's not a guarantee of anything, but at least those places show at least names of employers that say that they are at least open to the idea of hiring people full-time or part-time after 50 or 60.
Yeah, that was a great article, and I appreciated it even more because, Encore hosts our Wisdom and Experience event every year, and we actually have one coming up, and to actually recognize the organizations that do hire the mature worker. So it really is a hot topic right now as well, especially because so many people are returning to work.
Yeah.
So tell us about, I see you use the term longevity literacy. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's you know, a lot of us have heard of the term financial literacy just being by how knowledgeable we are about personal finances, and a lot of us can do better at that. Longevity literacy is sort of understanding aging and how long people live by and large, and all the things that come with that. And the studies that I wrote about show that when people are not very literate about longevity, they make incorrect assumptions about how long they're going to live. Usually they assume they're not going to live as long as they ultimately will, because they think about, well, my parents died when they were, 75 or 80, so I will too. Well, that's possible, but it's also very possible you're going to live a lot longer than that, because we're all tending to be, many of us are healthier than people were in earlier generations. There's also lots of ways that are helping us to take care of ourselves better, and we're just doing a better job of it. So I would say it's a good idea to expect to live to 85 or 90, maybe even longer than that, and plan accordingly as much as you can. Now that frightens and intimidates people sometimes, because they think, well, I don't know if I'll have enough money to last that long. And I would say, do what you can to try to help yourself, but don't lose too much sleep over that at night either, because who knows what the future holds for any of us.
Exactly, exactly. Well, how do you propose we get the word out about the longevity? Because I see that, and we see that with Encore. I see that with my own coaching, and it's really a novel idea to a lot of people. So, because especially at our age, so many of us, we grew up with this certain perspective of retirement, and we thought our retirement would be like our parents. So it's hard for us, unless we are well versed and knowledgeable in the area, to understand what that looks like. How do we get the word out?
Well, fortunately, it's a lot easier to learn and keep up with these things than it used to be, because of the internet and technology and books and writers who are writing about aging and longevity. So I would say, it just start with the Google search or go to the public library, and you'll quickly be able to find a lot of information about longevity and longevity literacy, and how to stay healthy longer. I'm a big fan of a fellow named Chip Conley. Some of the people in your audience may know him. He's the founder of what's called the Modern Elder Academy. Uh,
Mhm.
and he has that in Mexico, and now he's got one in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where he helps people in the second half of life lead better and happier lives. And I think he's got some very interesting things to say, and he writes a really great newsletter and a blog that's free that you might want to just track it. It's Chip Conley, Conley.
He writes some great things. He really does. And his academy sounds phenomenal. I would love to experience that one day.
Yeah, I would too. Um, some of his courses are on the pricey side. Others are shorter and less expensive. But I'm also interested to note that, and I wrote about this recently too, that more and more colleges and universities are now starting programs about midlife and reinvention and that sort of thing. And it used to be for years, if you were in older and you wanted to go to learn something at schools, you might go to a continuing education class, and you still can, and those can be great if you want to learn about movies or architecture or books or things like that. But these are programs that are specifically about who am I and how can I give back and where am I going to find meaning and purpose. And Yale University is about to start one, USC is about to start one, Boston College is about to start one, Stanford has one, Harvard has one, University of Texas, Notre Dame. They're all over the place. And they used to be 1 year long, only in person, very expensive. Now they are not necessarily that way. Some of those exist that way, but some of them are much shorter. Some of them are online or hybrid. University of Colorado, Denver has one. So I would say if this appeals to you, look into these, because there are a lot of really good programs that could help you figure out your next chapter.
Great advice, because there is so much out there. There really is. It's just a question of, letting people be aware that the information is there, but they have to, you can bring the horse to water. So, it's really important to know that it's coming, it's coming to light, that more and more people are looking to learn about that. So that is definitely good to know that so much is available. So let me ask you, how does your view from unretirement look different than before?
In a lot of different ways. I think since I've begun my own retirement, I've seen I've had a better appreciation for the importance of connecting with friends and family than I did when I started. I mean, I knew I should do that and it's a good idea, but I can't tell you how much joy I've gotten by seeing people I haven't seen in a while, either in person or by Zoom, and finding out about their lives and their family, and then getting together. This weekend, my wife and I are going to be driving to the Berkshires of Massachusetts, and we're going to go. We do this now every year. They have the Boston Symphony has something called. They play at a place called Tanglewood, and we go there. My wife and I used to go there, just the two of us. And the past few years, we've gone there with a few of my old college friends and their spouses, and some other friends of ours, some of whom didn't know each other at all. But I thought it might be fun just to get them all together, and I was a little nervous about doing it. It turned out it worked out so well that my friends all said we have to do this every year, and we're about for our third year. So I would say, don't be afraid to try something crazy like that, and you just might find people are more receptive to it than you might expect.
That's a great idea. That sounds fabulous.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah.
I would also say that since I began my unretired, I've learned that people's priorities change over time. And so what you think you may really want to spend your time on at the start may be different in a year or 3 months or 6 months or 5 years. When I started my unretirement, I had a kind of good idea of how much work I wanted to do and how much time I wanted to spend doing it. I'm now beginning to feel like I want to do a little less of that than I did and a little bit more of some of the other things. So that's changed. Um, and I would say also keep in mind that life happens. There are going to be things for the good and for the bad that you're not expecting. My wife and I have been spending more time doing caregiving than we thought we were going to. But on the other hand, we now have a new granddaughter that we didn't have a year ago, and she's out in California. So we're spending more time visiting California and doing FaceTiming. So those are some things that my view has differed than it did when I started my own retirement.
That's fabulous. And I think you really hit on it. You really need to be flexible. You really need to, adjust, as we've all learned to do, especially in the last couple of years. Adjust and really just be flexible about things. Sometimes I hear people say, "Oh, I've tried that. I'm not going back. I don't want to do that." And you know what? Just step out of your comfort zone. Just try something different. And as you mentioned earlier, you don't have to stick with it if you don't like it, but try it. At least, if you have never been adventurous in your life, this is the time. This is the time, because we don't know how much time we do have to try it. So this is a great opportunity to try new things and really enjoy life.
And you might do it with a friend too. I was talking to a woman recently who said I teach a master class in unretirement at NYU. I've done this now for 2 years in a row. I just finished this year's class, and I brought back a student from last year's class, and I said, "So how's it been going now you've been unretired for a year?" And she said, "Well, she's just starting to do it, and she found a friend of hers that she hadn't seen very much." And the friend said, "Hey, I'm going to this dance class. Do you want to go take this dance class with me?" She had no plans to do it, but she did. And they went and they liked it. And then that led to another dance class and I think a third one. And so you just never know where these things are going to take you. I also know somebody who thought she would try painting, and she joined a group, and she found she really wasn't very good at it. At least she didn't think she was, didn't enjoy it. So she stopped, but she tried a different kind of art, and she likes that much better. So it is a great time to just dabble, I would say. There's a guy who wrote a book called The Tapas Life to Retirement, TAPAS, the Argentinian food where you little this, little that. And that was his attitude toward retirement. It's just treat it like you're having a meal of tapas.
I love that. I love that analogy, especially since I come from an Italian family. So it's very similar. Little of this, a little of that. Great advice. Jan Reese has a comment.
I wanted to get the name of the article because it sounds like a good article to share with my network of HR professionals. Christine, the one you mentioned,
Yes,
that he wrote with
I'll get
somebody
that out.
else.
Yes, I'll get that out to you. Will do.
Excellent. And then the last thing I wanted to share is an experience that I had recently. I recently went through a series of interviews with a local employer here in Palm Beach. And while the company has a multi-generational workforce, and the leader was very eager to hire what she called a mature team member for her team. When it was time for me to meet with the team, the chemistry was not there. So while the company was eager to employ somebody my age, the reception, the interaction that I had with the team was not there. So that's why when I heard about that article, I want to share it with my, my colleagues and my peers, because it's important to sort of like educate management and leadership about, if we're going to say that we're ready to do this, everybody has to be on board. And the same thing applies to, mature people pursuing courses in community colleges. And, if the companies that they want to work with or volunteer with are not ready, they're going to perceive that, because I perceived it when I sat with the team. I was speaking, and the nonverbal cues that I was seeing with my own eyes, it was incredible.
What was it about? What was it about the team that gave them a problem? What were you seeing? What were you hearing?
The like whenever I spoke, the eye contact that they were giving each other.
Okay.
It was telling me, like, people are in our age bracket. We have tons and tons of stories to share. We illustrate points and our knowledge and our competency via stories, what we have accomplished, how we did something, in a certain company, and they were becoming bored.
Well, there's a very
stories.
There's a very good book about all that you might have seen called Gentelligence. Gentelligence is written by a professor at I think I want to say Miami of Ohio, but it's all about how teams of workers of different generations need to work better together. And part of it is the older people understanding how to work with younger people, and part of it is how the younger people need to understand how to work with the older people. And sometimes it's about saying, well, that's not the way I would have done it, but that's the way they like to do it. They should do it that way, and maybe I need to start doing it the way that they do it. Maybe I should do more texting and fewer phone calls and emails, because that's how younger people prefer. And maybe they need to do a little bit more emailing, because they know that's the way the older people may prefer to do it. So I like what's in that book, because it suggests that we can all adapt a little better than we're doing, I think.
Thank you. I gotta run my break. I gotta get back to work.
Thank you.
My questions.
Good luck.
Thanks.
And Richard, another book that I've come across on that exact topic is Sticking Points. And I don't know if you probably can't see it. It's Sticking Points by Hayden Shaw.
Oh, thank you.
And which is also, it breaks it down. It's how to get 5 generations working together in the 12 places they come apart. And it really dissects each generation. It's very interesting.
Good. There's another group I wanted to mention, particularly for the men who are with us right now, because there's a support group for people, men who are transitioning into retirement called Chapter X. And it's online, and there's also a podcast, I think. It's run by this guy named Michael Kay. He's the gentleman I mentioned before, who's like the financial planner who's now playing saxophone. But he felt he was feeling that there are a lot of people, a lot of men in their 60s or 50s who were sort of struggling with what retirement would be and what they would do with themselves and who they were and that sort of thing. So they get together on Zoom once a month and they sort of share ideas and they help each other out. And he did this because he felt like women tend to be better in supporting each other than men do, that they are more likely to talk to each other. Men kind of, he says, tend to keep these things to themselves. And I think that's probably true in general. So I would say you may want to check in on Chapter X, Michael K. Thank you, Norman. That's right. I've been to a couple of their sessions. I find them fascinating. And I think Michael does a great job with that group.
That is excellent advice, because we do find that a lot with Encore, and we've mentioned that many times. Whenever we have any type of gathering, it's predominantly women. And men seem to have a little bit more difficulty doing that. And I have seen it myself personally, and I do see that certain civic organizations seem to do better at that, like the Kiwanis and the Rotary type of organizations. My brother, for one, who was kind of flailing as to whether or not he was going to retire and what he was doing, and he has found some solace in his church group. It's a men's group. So there are those groups out there available, but as you said, it's, women have an easier time getting there. It's really, just letting them know, this is great. I hadn't heard about Chapter X, so thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll just add, by the way, that I attend a lot of online sessions in different organizations, and it's a real mystery where all the men are. I mean, sometimes they show up, but it's only a few here and there. And I know there's more women than men in our age group, but that doesn't explain it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So thank you. That's good information. So we're winding down here, and I guess, you've given so much advice already, Richard, about working in retirement and those type of things. I think to wrap it up, what would you say makes a successful retirement, if you had to narrow it down?
Well, I was thinking about that. I'll mention a few surveys that I've seen, and I'll tell you personally as well. There's a very good book by an author named Wes Moss, Moss, about the happiest retirees. He's done surveys of retirees to find out which ones are the happiest and why. And what he found was, some of it is financial. Of course, the more money you have, the happier you tend to be, although not always. But he said, when it comes to finances, he thinks one of the things that matters most is paying off your mortgage. So I would say if it's possible to do that, that may make you happier, make you more successful in retirement. But he also is very big about social connections and curiosity. What he talks about, he calls it finding new core pursuits and new hobbies. And he found that the people in retirement who are keeping and growing their social connections and staying curious and finding hobbies and pursuits or spending more time in them tend to be happier than the ones who aren't. I'll also mention there was a survey that AgeWave and Edward Jones did. It was called Longevity and the New Journey of Retirement. And they surveyed retirees. And what they found was they broke them into, I think, 4 different groups of subcategories of retirees, and they ranged from the ones who were very happy and successful to the ones who were very unhappy and not successful. And it was mostly not about how they were doing financially. It was more about psychologically. And the happiest ones were the ones they call purposeful pathfinders. And I think purposeful is the key there. It's finding, there's a Japanese word called ikigai, which means, loosely translated, the reason to get up in the morning. And I feel like if you can find your ikigai or a few of those in retirement and have a reason to get up in the morning and meaning and purpose in your life, that's going to make your retirement more successful. I found that personally. And people find it in lots of different ways. Some of it they find through work. Sometimes they find it through volunteering. Sometimes they find it through relationships. There's all different ways, and you can find a little bit in different ways. but it's the people who don't have that at all who are the ones who tend to be struggling the most.
Such great advice, because it really is. I actually know about Ikigai and have studied it a little bit. And the Japanese have a number of other different methodologies for finding purpose in life. But Ikigai is particularly for retirement. But it really is important to have that reason for being. And I think that's really when we can find that. And, sometimes when I talk to different people, it's they're reaching for a something. And I always say it's inside of you. You have to find it inside of you. And, sometimes it's just, for me, it's a prayer. For other people, it could be something different, but we need to take that time to really be insightful about what it is we truly want and how we want to spend that time and what's really valuable to us. So very important information. I think we're going to open this up and see if we have any more questions or comments. I know Rosemary, wait, you already told Richard that you would have a question in case no one else did. So, so go right ahead, Rosemary.
Thank you. I always am inspired by our speakers to come up with lots of questions, but I don't like to keep other people from asking theirs. So if anybody else has a burning question, please raise your hand.
Norman does.
I see Norman has.
Norman?
Yes, I was just going to mention that I just attended a session from a new place yesterday that I hadn't been to before. And I might actually be doing some things for them in the fall. But what I found very interesting is that they told me that one of their most interesting sessions is a session on gratitude. And I've always been interested in that too. But they said they actually have a huge number of sessions every week where people talk about gratitude. So I figured, let me go and sign up for one of these and see what it's all about. And I joined the group, and it was only a half hour, but they really went around each person talking about what they're grateful for. And I thought it was a wonderful idea on what we can do. And the other thing that I thought of that when I was growing up, my parents seemed to be focused on medical issues and doctor appointments. And for a long time, I thought that's what it's going to be like to be an older person. And of course, for some people it is, because you have to be lucky or unlucky, whatever it is. I mean, my health, thankfully, has been good for the most part, but obviously that can change at any point. So I think it's certainly good to take advantage of the time we have, not only the time that we have to live, but the time that we're in good health, that we're able to do the things that we want to do. And seeing that these sessions on gratitude have been so popular, that's a really great thing to incorporate into your life if you're not already doing it.
So
Norman, what organization was it that you mentioned?
This is actually an organization that is doing something that I just learned about recently. They're called Unretirement, and a lot of the people that are participating in their sessions are actually doing it through their TVs, which I think is kind of old-fashioned, but obviously there are a lot of people who are still comfortable with that way of doing things. So I thought that was interesting as well, that you have to be open, and not everyone has kind of gotten on the merry-go-round and it's comfortable with Zoom and Teams and all those online platforms, and you have to meet people where they are.
You said Juniper, was that it? I want to.
It's called Unretirement. I'll put the website in the chat so you can.
Thank you. So people can talk online and share online through these sessions. Is that it?
People can share either online, or if they're on the phone, they can share that way as well. I do notice that there are still a lot of people who are attending sessions that clearly can be done online, but many people choose to do it through their phones. So personally, I mean, I've been doing things online for years now, so I'm kind of used to it, but many people are not. So I think, you have to meet people where they are, and some people are just more comfortable doing it the old-fashioned way, but better off they do that than not to do anything at all.
Thank you, Norman. I have found personally that it really changes your outlook. Generally speaking, if you start your day with a short reading about gratitude and thinking about what you're grateful for rather than focusing on the problems. And if I stray from that, I find that my outlook is not as good as if I just take a short amount of time to focus on what I'm grateful for. Having just had my 85th birthday, I'm grateful to be here. Regardless of whatever issues there may be. And when you were talking about longevity, uh, Richard, one of the things I've done is I went on the Social Security website and they have a little calculator where
Mhm.
you can input some information and they would give you um, a calculation of what you might live to. However, because of course, they have a lot of information to draw upon, a database. And I was a little curious because while so far have been in good health, my parents and everybody in my family was gone by 85. I thought, well, maybe I better check that out, see if I've got any more time left. And Social Security says that I'm good till 91.
Mm.
So okay, that's very something else to be grateful for. So a lot of people don't know about those little things. But I would like to get back to your comments about volunteering, Richard, and I've had a lot of contact with people who are retired because I live in an over 55 community. And of course, through my Encore work, which I started Encore 8 years ago, and I've met a lot of wonderful people through it. Um, I have found that some people have, I think, very negative attitudes about volunteering. They've been acculturated to believe that the only work worth doing is that you get paid for.
Mm.
I have spoken to a number of people in my community and have, who are kind of bored. I mean, really, all they do is sit around the pool and complain and go out to dinner. I mean, that seems to be their life. And I don't hear them talking about anything that's interesting. And maybe they've go to a movie or something. But when I have suggested getting involved with volunteer work, their attitude is, "Well, I did my 40 years, and I'm done."
Mm.
And I I I think it's such a limiting point of view. I actually don't know what to say to people like that. I mean, because I've always volunteered, I've always been involved with a lot of interesting things. And it isn't about being a goody two shoes. I've always gotten more than I've given. But these are people who have this very narrow outlook. What would you say to people like that?
Um, I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm not that surprised. I know there are people who feel that way. I would say to them, is there something that you feel passionate about that you wish you could be helpful to improve, to make the community better, the world better, whatever it might be. And chances are there's a way that you could be helpful to volunteer with them, whether that's in person or from home. There's all different ways you can do it. I think, all of us probably have something or things that we would like to improve, and or something that saddens us or bothers us, or we feel there's a group of people that we know could use some help. And I think, it just takes a little time to just think about, who that might be, and then where can you be helpful with them.
Thank you. The other thing that I responded to what you said about a successful retirement is the importance of social connection. and curiosity, learning something new. And, I'll talk to people about maybe learning something new. And they said, well, I've got my card games, and I've read articles of card games can stimulate mental activity, but they don't grow you because it's just doing more of what you've already done. Curiosity is where you're learning something new. You're open to learning something new. So playing cards is filling up time, may be enjoyable, but it doesn't really do as much for mental stimulation as trying something new. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. And I feel like there's lots of different ways people can get social connection, and playing cards with friends is a perfectly fine way to do it, but there's lots of other ways. And I feel like it's useful to get out and maybe do something with some people that you don't know very well or don't know at all or haven't spent a lot of time with, to just broaden your social connections. And also they may be helpful to you in ways that you could use some help, and you might be able to be helpful to them as well. I do find study after study shows that the more people can build and keep their social connections as they get older, the happier they are and the less likely they're going to be depressed and bored. And I find that depression or boredom are very serious problems for a lot of retirees. And often it's because they don't make the effort to make social connections and get out and be around people.
Thank you, Richard. You're doing great work, and you've also mentioned, I've been following your columns in Next Avenue for years. Um, and I'm glad to see you're doing so many new things. But you also mentioned a lot of resources that we have already shared through Encore's newsletters and programming, such as Ken Dickwall's Age Wave columns, Chip Conley's programs and articles and so forth. So that is one of the things that we try to do, is to share all these resources that can help people live a better life after age 50. And so I probably will get back to you, Richard, because you mentioned a number of people, programs, and resources that I would like to follow up so that we could share more
I'd be happy
about
to.
what's out there.
I'd be happy to do that, Rosemary. And there are a number of books that I think could be very helpful for people. When in my masterclass, I had my students read the books, and they found them very useful, all about retirement, and some of it is financial, some of it is psychological. And so I'm happy to share those if you like, and that might be useful for your members too.
Yeah, maybe we could start a book. We tried to have a book club early on in our development, and not everybody was interested in the same book, but maybe a listing of useful books as resources was something we should share.
Oh, good. Okay, well, happy to stay in touch, and let me know how I can help. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions before we wrap up? Eduardo?
No, just I want to thank Richard, Rosemary, and Christine as well. You guys are the best. I love participating in this monthly webinars, and I'm always learning something new. I'm not sure if you'd like to say something about the wisdom and
An experience
coming up.
Yes, I did mention it earlier, but that is coming up. And unfortunately, the October event has been postponed. So we'll be getting back to you with more information on that, but it's only a postponement. So we will be giving you a new date shortly.
Great. If I can help reaching out to more people, I'd love to do that on your behalf.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for your participation. We appreciate it. Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you so much. Richard, you've been a wealth of information. It's been a pleasure having you. And thank you for taking the time to be with us. And we hope to be in touch shortly because we all have so many questions about everything that you offered. So thank you so much. And thank you for being here. Thank you, everyone else, for joining us.